Greetings and welcome to all you fans, lovers, and followers of the beautiful game, and more so to Real Football Vibes, your weekly favorite football show with an emphasis of what's happening in the only English speaking South American country, Guyana. And today we certainly will be looking and reviewing what Guyana's performance has been so far this year in international football, mainly World Cup qualifiers and the Gold Cup. And also, we'll be speaking of what has attracted the world over the last month and climaxes this weekend. Of course, the Copa America in Brazil, that will climax tomorrow. Bitter rivals Argentina and Brazil. Messi and company against Neymar and company. That should be interesting. And then on Sunday, after 55 years being in the doldrums, so to speak, England have finally reached an international final where they will confront Italy, who has been equally impressive at Euros this year. And what a fantastic final that is anticipated to be. England already celebrating, one can say. They're singing loudly and boastfully, "It's coming home." Well, I never knew, well, the European Cup had a home in England at any time in the history of the sport. But that will be an interesting final, I can assure you. And of course, within our CONCACAF region, Gold Cup 2021 kicks off tomorrow, and Caribbean countries, Curacao and Trinidad, will be in action on the opening day. So lots to talk about on today's episode of Real Football Vibes, keeping it real on the beautiful game. And today I'm again graced and blessed with company of esteemed knowledgeables of the game, past players, and people who continue to contribute to the beautiful game. No stranger to Real Football Vibes, all the way from New Jersey via Linden and the Golden Jaguars, former midfielder and now football coach out there in New Jersey. Hearty welcome to you, Coyote Magellan, Coach Coyote.
Good day, Russ. Thanks for having me again on the show. Good day to the
And
viewers.
also joining us, one who has shown tremendous loyalty to the Golden Jaguars over the years, one who is an accomplished athlete within his own rights. I know he would want to tell me of his records on the track, and one who has always been contributing to the sport. And I know one who follows the sport globally with a passion to Hala Madrid. And I want to think he's a Man U fan like myself too. Let me say a special good afternoon and welcome to Dr. Aaron Fraser.
Thank you very much, Ross. It's a real pleasure to be on your show. Coyote, nice seeing you.
And true to loyalty, you're sporting your golden jag.
Always.
Indeed. And also joining us today, as you know, we look at football not just in Guyana, but we have a great interest in what's happening in the region. And one would want to safely say that Caribbean countries were disappointing in World Cup qualifiers. And joining us today all the way from Antigua and Barbuda, someone no stranger to me. I would have had playing days with him while I was domiciled in Antigua in the late 80s, early 90s, and one who has distinguished himself on the field of play, captain in Antigua and Barbuda, also playing in college football in the USA, and now just recently appointed technical director of the Antigua and Barbuda Football Association, my brother and friend, Saobi Gomes.
Good evening. Good afternoon. It's good to be a part of your show this afternoon.
Thank you. So we're going to kick off things immediately, and I'm going to start um, with Coach Coyote, the man who has been really following and dissecting what's happening and evaluating what was happening on the pitch while Guyana were competing in some 5 internationals this year, and just a solitary win against Bahamas and losing the other games. The last encounter being last Saturday against Guatemala, going under 4-0. But despite the widespread call for the removal of the senior national coach, there seems to be some ultra defense coming from within the corridors of the GFF, and one can understand so. Coyote McKinnon, as a former player, a coach, one standing neutral, your impressions, thoughts on Guyana's performance this year, and do you share the sentiments that have been echoed and calling for the removal of the coach?
First, as a former player, I'm now trying to become a coach because the process is ongoing, and also a fan. I must say, from a football perspective, um, very disappointed in terms of where we are. I'm disappointed because whatever happens to our senior national team, it has a direct influence on our our country's football at home. And I say that because your national team is a representation of what is coming. Um, and oftentimes, when your national team does well, young players are given that exposure. Young players are given the opportunities that is necessary to enhance. As the game evolves, you will need those young players to be in that environment where they're part of that evolution and will continue to help your national team. So, from a visionary perspective, I'm disappointed because our performance sets us back a bit. Because now, if you were to take a young player from Guyana to Europe, it will be very difficult for them to respect that player and give him the opportunity as a player coming from, let's say, Jamaica, or a player coming from Panama, or a player coming from Costa Rica. So from that perspective, it was very I was very disappointed in from the perspective of if they should release the coach. I always say it's what is the vision of the people who hold the position of leadership, and if the vision is connected with who they have, it's very difficult for me to say what they should do. But from the results and what we've seen is a result-oriented game, something needs to change. And it don't mean that the person in charge is not good. We see Mourinho get fired. We see top-class coaches get fired, not because they're not good coaches, but because whatever they're doing, whatever is their culture, whatever is their ideology, whatever is their philosophy, it's just not congruent with what they have in front of them. Sorry. So that might needs to change. So that is where I stand with from that, based on with relation to the changes and the noise that we're hearing.
Dr. Fraser, you're one who followed the team. You know the composition of teams over the years. You've been there with them. Have you been around the team this year with those 5 international games? And I know even if you have not been traveling with the team, you certainly would have been following the exploits. And and I'm most positively certain you have a view and you have an opinion as to how you interpret what transpired out in the pitch. Your thoughts?
Certainly, I can say, I speak more I can't speak from a technical standpoint, such as Kayo, but I can tell you after looking at the World Cup qualifiers, I'm being as pragmatic as I am. I can tell you the last game for the Gold Cup I wasn't even disappointed. And I wasn't disappointed because my expectations were low. As a matter of fact, when I looked at the game, and that's a Gold Cup game, the eliminator, I was actually encouraged by some of the heart shown. And I wondered at that point, if we had shown the same fight and heart in the World Cup qualifiers, where would we have been? Right? And I think if we did, the results would have been better, and we certainly would have stand a better chance of even, going through in that group. But if I take the recent results into perspective, it shows a worrying trend, right? I've seen an analysis done recently, saying, well, the record is 4 wins from 11 games and so forth. But we must remember that those earlier wins, those 3 wins, came early in the tenure of the new coach. So it certainly shows that we're spiraling down. We're going into a dark hole. And football is a game of results, right? As Kayos alluded to, yes, you may be an excellent coach, but if the dynamics is not right, if all the factors are not coming into place at the right time, then there's a need for change, right? And those in position to make those decisions should be willing to, right? Change is not easy. It's hard to start over again, but it's results oriented, and you must be able and willing to take those hard decisions. And that's the way I see it going forward.
There has been a train of thought, and I think Coyote was part of this in the last program, whereby the culture of the Central American teams, football is practically part of the national culture. So whenever the team gets out on the field of play, the players understand and know what's at stake because football is part of their culture. And there's the narrative and belief that it should be applied here in the Caribbean as opposed to football associations gravitating to foreign coaches and technical directors who have little or no knowledge of the culture, which is so important. Antigua and Barbuda is an exception. They have been utilizing their national resources over the years, and they have shown progress and results. And it is here I would like to bring in Solby Gomes, first and foremost, congratulating you on your appointment. And what's the general feeling of the footballing populace in Antigua with regards to Antigua's results in the just concluded World Cup qualifications, having missed out?
Well, let me say thank you for congratulating me on my new appointment. But as it relates to the underground, what has been happening, as you would have learned that over the last, let's say, 5 to 6 years, the senior national coach for the Antigua and Barbuda Football Association has been overseas-based coaches. In the office of the technical director for the last 5-6 years, there was a local Antiguan, Debo Williams, but he passed away in October of last year. And now the role has been filled by another local Antiguan, myself, in the role of a technical director. Now, the role of the technical director is developing the pathway for our young footballers coming through grassroots right up to our senior national level. So that development pathway is part of the development part for the technical director's role to ensure that that strategic plan is being laid out all across the country, that our coaches are spreading the right message. We are teaching the children the right habits, right values, both on and off the field. But for the national team selection in terms of the coaches, that is a result-oriented. So their task is to go out and win games. As a result of that, their job is very much like on fire. They're expecting to generate results. So it's going to take a while for the new plan to set in because the young players that we are developing is going to take time to get into where we want to take them. Now, the coaches who are coming in to coach our young players, because they're looking for result, they want to go straight to players who they know. And what you'll find, because they've been overseas-based coaches, coaching at national level, they tend to bring in foreign-based players to strengthen the national team in the likes of our English-based players who have ties alleged to our being parents being born in Antigua. So you will find of a squad of 18, maybe 9 foreign-based players. Those foreign-based players, if you're going to pay all those money to bring them to play for the national team, they should be starting. So you'll find now of the 9, maybe 6 or 7 of them are starting in the team. The coaches who is on the ground, who have been brought in, and they've been brought in for a short stint to execute a game situation, to provide a result in a qualifying tournament. It's too short of a period for them to know all the situation, to understand the relationship of the players on the field. They might be bringing players from England to represent the team, but they might be at a different area of the country. So they're not knowing the full relationship of these players. They're now playing in the tournament, having to merge all these relationships together to bring out the results. It's difficult. So the aim is what's happening with the education across the Caribbean in CONCACAF and what FIFA is doing across the Caribbean is to educate our local coaches around here to bring them up to that level. So you'll have your own homegrown coaches coaching your national team. They're in the situation, they're living the situation, they know the reality, they know the relationship of the players, and they will be better informed to make better decisions in selecting a national team, into selecting players on the field, and as a result, they will be better able to make a more informed decision when it comes match day. But the process is going to take some time, and as our young coaches across the Caribbean continue to gain that knowledge, they will be able to rise to that top, and the local association will be able to select who they have and believe in who they have to run the football. But Antigua has made a start. We have shown the confidence in what we have. We have the last 2 terms, we have indoctrinated our own technical directors, which is in the right direction. So we are on the right path. We know exactly what we want, and it's going to take some time, but we're willing to put in the hard work. And as a result, I'm being at the head is a true reflection of what the Football Association is looking forward to in terms of taking our game to the next level.
So you're working with a national football philosophy, I would want to think, or you're tasked with the responsibility of developing one.
That is correct.
That is already there, that you're working with and developing and even improving?
Well, the aim is, my plan is to, and along with the local coaches, is to develop a national philosophy for the Antigua and Barbuda, going as far as the DNA of the ABFA, which is the Antigua and Barbuda Football Association. What really drives us? What motivates us? What inspires us? What is the actual trend that makes us tick? That's the hardcore of what we're dealing with. We're developing our football philosophy from that DNA, and that will create the pathway where we want to go. That is in place now, and that is what the main strategic plan that I was charged to do. And all of the coaches will see the rollout of that strategic plan, and they will be coaching from that one curriculum all across Antigua and Barbuda.
Coach Coyote, I'm sure you would have been devouring and taking in all that Mr. Gomes was saying. Anything you would like to add that is imperative in going forward in creating and developing that national policy?
I think it's fantastic, and we had this discussion from the first show
right.
to the last show of truly understanding culture and culture and building an identity through your core values and what you represent, because every country players will learn differently.
That's correct.
and the coaching methodology and the training methodology that is being used will have a direct influence on the player's development. And one of the things Mr. Gomes said that is very important, and we spoke about this the last time. In Guyana, we want to be too independent, and it will not develop our football.
Yeah.
We must have all the coaches and the soccer education need to be number one priority. You cannot develop if you can't coach. And I'm not talking about teaching, I'm talking about coaching. And coaching is the ability to influence.
Yes.
Teaching is giving instructions.
Yeah.
We need more coaching in the Caribbean, where you have the ability to raise the awareness and the consciousness of the athlete, where it moves to autonomy.
Yes.
If we continue to be instructors, our players will not be able to complete at the next level. It's a different speed.
Yep.
It's a different level of intelligence. So if we don't focus on education, sometimes you hear about we need to play more tournaments, we need to play more games. Now, playing games are implementation. They're not. You learn through playing games based on what you've done in training. You need to spend more time practicing. So if you focus in more on playing games, which is an implementation phase, then what happens? What will happen with the development of the understanding of how to implement?
Correct.
You can't implement without understanding.
Correct.
So all the things that Mr. Gomes is saying right now, I hope that not just Guyana, but the whole Caribbean understands that you need to have one playing philosophy across. That means coaches need to be coming together more, sharing ideas, sharing training methodology, have one game model for the entire country. This is why Spain will never hire an English coach.
That's
They
right.
will hire Spaniard.
That's right.
Nobody else is hiring other coaches because look, Senegal, they bring a Senegalese. Why? Because everybody understanding now culture plays a major role in creating an identity.
Yep.
And that's what I was saying about Guyana all the time. You really don't see the identity of who we are. All we have is colonialization. One person comes, they bring their ideology. When they leave after a year, then somebody else come, it's a new ideology. And now how do we get to the place where we understand what we're doing every year? Because we're going to be changing every time. And it's bigger than firing coach, or it's bigger than getting rid of coach. But we need to get to a place where it's more about intelligence and not overly criticizing. It's going to be about solutions. So that's my point of view, and I'm really impressed with what Mr. Gomes was talking about in having Antigua play one way, and it's going to take some time.
Yep.
But it needs trust, and it needs soccer education. We give our local coaches an opportunity, then after a year we go on with them.
Yes.
Indeed.
So then how are we going to develop a culture?
I know you've been around and you have had the privilege of experiencing the levels of professionalism at the highest level, like in the Spanish towns, the Barcelonas, the Real Madrid. With regards to marketing, promoting the Golden Jaguars, do you think enough was done to really make the Golden Jaguars marketable within the diaspora?
So, all right, there's probably an inside story that I could share, but which I might not share. Because you see, the thing about doing business in Guyana, we don't really do real big business in Guyana. Or maybe I'll share part of it. So before we attended the Gold Cup 2019, Guyana was looking for sponsors and so forth. And I was able to put our federation in contact with the guy who was my friend, who was in charge of Nike's marketing campaign for the Rio Olympics and also the London Olympics, right? But of course, these guys come at a hefty sum,
Big guys.
but they will bring the value.
Exactly.
Right. So I made that connection. I know the initial talks were started, but then I saw we end up with Capelli. But I know working with Daryl, and Daryl Jones used to be Nike's head of Nike marketing for those two Olympics. Darren is outstanding and so forth. I know he could have brought real value to our marketing program, but of course, we in Guyana, when we see the figures, we are scared by the couple thousands. I mean, these guys don't charge little money, but I can assure you that you will get value. But I want to touch back on something that we spoke about just now about culture and value and core values in particular.
Right.
I think while there will be several, nuances and cultures in different places where we are domiciled, I think there are some underlying core values that will resonate wherever you are. And once those are exercised and practiced, then you wouldn't have the problems that we see sometimes. And one is respect, right? So if you're going to respect a man or play as a player, then you'll have that in return. But if you have an overseas coach coming showing scant regard for players, and this is scant regard for players in Ghana's situation, economic, right? So you tell a man you must come to training 5 days a week, right? Or if you don't come, you can't make the team. The guy will come to you up front and say, Coach, look, I got 3 children. I could come away from work, 3 days a week, but I can't do 5, right? But he's still left out. And those are some of the things that you have to make accommodation for, because we're not in a full professional situation. So you just can't, come and have disregard for what we call it is the actual situation on the ground and enforce a program. So I'll say, the practice of those core values of respect and so forth will go a far way and will even supplant some of the challenges that you will get from culture, right? Yeah, so that's just my point, just my contribution to that particular point of culture. But certainly, if we go back to the original questions you asked in marketing, and certainly we can do, but we must be prepared to do big business. And to enter big business, you got to be able and willing to, you got to be willing to pay those premium dollars.
Yes, that's how it is. Football is business, and it's all about the football business and applying it to get the results. We're going to go and take a brief break for some education, as we've been saying. And of course, Real Football Vibes, one of its primary tasks is to educate and provide a platform as well for including everyone. So we're looking out for your views, your comments as we go along, looking at the World Cup qualification performance of the Caribbean team. Let's join Coach Coyote on some coaching tips.
And the 9 tried to recover because he recognized the line was broken already. And the 8 come is very important into supporting positions ahead of time in a better angle. Because again, if you stay here, it's difficult because the player could close the passing lane, and now they're pretty much playing 1v1s. So if you recognize this, then you drop into an angle where the ball could play away from the defender, and now we're into the middle third successfully using possession through progression. That means moving the ball quickly and effectively through the thirds by pass or dribble.
Love that.
From one golden jaguar of the same era,
Yes.
we've just been joined by another golden jaguar, and in fact, the former national captain who has had some recent success coaching out there in Florida. Good afternoon to you, Skipper Chris Nurse. Thanks for joining us here on Real Football Vibes. And I know you have been following the Guyana's performance, and you have your perspective and view as to what went wrong, what has been going wrong, and what we should be addressing. Your thoughts, impressions on Guyana's World Cup performance.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just double check that you can see the camera. Everything's clear.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, good. So firstly, good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody is in good stead. You know, I thought that the effort, the intensity, and the talent was present in Guyana's recent games, as it ever has been with Guyana national team over the course of the past decade, or over the past of the two decades. We've always had talent. We have always competed well. We've always given a very good display of ourselves. And I think the only instances when, in the past decade, when we've not represented ourselves in that manner was maybe 2014, when there was the agenda when no international players were allowed to represent Guyana. We didn't give a good representation ourselves in the Caribbean Cup. And maybe the games against Trinidad, St. Kitts, and Puerto Rico, we didn't give such a good reflection of ourselves. But there was definitely a response in the game against Guatemala, and everybody at the stadium and leaving the stadium was impressed with the talent of the team, impressed with the intensity and the work ethic of the team. But these are things that have been prevalent in Guyana football for the course of the past decade. So there's nothing special or spectacular about receiving those praises. These are things that have always been present with our national team. I think what's so fruitful to see in countries like Grenada and Antigua is that they're now empowering their own people. And I want to believe that Antigua now has Mikel Ledgerwood as the head coach for the national team, you know, a former national player, a player who's played at the highest level. Now, if you want to have professionalism in Guyana, we have to understand that Guyana hasn't had professional locally. So it's very difficult for a local coach to bring something that they've not experienced and lived. So you need the players who have lived the life as a professional, understand the little details to bring that education and those experiences back home to help elevate the program. So while we continue to hold on to positions of power because we live locally, we actually starve ourselves from progression in the game and how it's being operated nationally. Yeah. And until we actually have that self-reflective moment and we say, hey, do you know what? I never coached at a professional level. I never coached at a professional club. I never played at a professional club. We say, do you know what? I need to spend some time either working alongside professionals or going into those environments to get those professional experiences and then bring that experiences home. We will never be able to elevate the level because we're being governed by people who have not had the vision from those levels. So it's a set of humility because we have a lot of power grabbing without the experience and the knowledge. And you cannot get that experience from a textbook. There's no way you can replicate. This is the nuance that I have when people say, oh, the overseas-based players, the foreign-based players. No, those are professional players. And unless you've been a professional, you understand what it takes to be a professional, not for 1 year, for 10 years, to maintain that position and that status, then you will never have a appreciation for what it actually means to be a professional football player. You'll never appreciate it. You'll just believe that anybody can do it. But to do it and to sustain that career, you will only appreciate that when you've been there. So we have a disappreciation for the overseas-based players. We have a disappreciation for our foreign-based players because the way we talk about them, the way we treat them is with a complete lack of respect because the people talking to them have never been in their shoes to understand what it takes to be a professional in England for 10 years. They never understood what it takes to be a professional in USA for 6 years. And we approach them with an approach of resentment. Like, I should be there. I could have been there. No, but listen, the game of football is always you are where you are for a reason. Sometimes it's discipline. Sometimes it's manners. Many instances, it's consistency. You know, we are always talking about the talent that played 2 or 3 years ago and why they're not a national team now, because of consistency. And consistency is part of professionalism. You know, being a professional is you are consistently at 80% of your best. Consistently. Every day, a coach can rely that you're going to be in and around 80%. Whereas an inconsistent player may be at 90% one day and then at 20% the next day. And that cannot last in a professional environment. So we need to really have a self-reflection and it takes real leadership. Because at the moment, we're missing leadership who are able to bring everybody together. Guyana has so much potential of people and professionals globally who are willing to come back to Guyana and give to Guyana. Or in what we've just gone through a whole year where everything has been done by the internet. You know, we've just operated in a whole year where the whole world has operated from the sofas and still been able to function. So imagine if Guyana is actually able to utilize all its resources that it has worldwide, all the experience that it has worldwide, and everybody comes under one umbrella to help elevate Guyana football. Now, the problem is the leadership are unable to unite people. They're still holding on to their personal malices. They're still on to their personal egos, still holding on to their personal agendas. And the only people suffering off the back of that is the local players because they don't get exposure. They don't get the help. They don't get the coaching. they don't get the development that they need. We can say development, but Coyote will know because he's completing the A license right now. I will know because I'm completing the A license. There is a process to development, and there's many, many things that go behind the word development. You can say the word development and people say, oh yeah, development. But then let's see the process to development. Let's see what you're actually putting in place for these youngsters who display talent. Now, this technical staff is at 24 months. And in 24 months, I talk to the local players and like, hey, tell me your development plan. Then they're like, what is that? Well, then no development is taking place. Because if you recognize a local player has talent and that individual doesn't have a plan to maximize their potential, then we're using the word development without really without really putting development in plan. And if you're pushing that word development out to people who don't understand what development is, because if they're not doing their A licenses or they're not operating in professional environments, the word development means a lot to different people. And the way the game is going in the future, the word development, what it meant 20 years ago, which is development is, oh, you're just putting a player to run, or you're putting them to jump over hurdles, you're putting a player into a game. That's not quite development in 2021, 2022. The whole process to development and understanding how players learn, how players are to be coached, the information, the way coaches learn, elevating ourselves as coaches, and more so understanding that you're coaching people. And one thing that Jamal Shabazz was very good at was people management. He was able to manage players from all different backgrounds, all different demographics. He was able to manage people magnificently, and that's why Ghana national team was able to have periods of success, because his ability to manage people. We were never angels. Gregory Richardson was never an angel, but there were so many instances where Shabazz was able to talk to him, to forgive him, to nurture him, to mentor him, and to continue to work with him. Now, you've seen so many national team players just coming in and literally being chopped out the national team program, and nobody can understand why. We understand mental health, and we understand that losing your career or losing your status can affect a player's mental health. And you're watching national team players being chopped out the national team with no explanation. The head coach isn't even picking up the phone to them, not replying to messages. Think about how you're dealing with that person, that player, as a person first and foremost. You know, respect the person. Even if you don't want them as a player, have the respect for them as a person, have the respect of the career that they've had, have a respect for what they've given to national program over the course of the years, and first deal with them as a person. But we've lost our ability to deal with each other as people, Guyanese to Guyanese, first and foremost. We're allowing ourselves to be disrespected by people who are not Guyanese. And the second the paychecks stop coming, you will not see them in Guyana. You won't even hear them talking about Guyana. We're allowing our national program to be used as a stepping stone for people to go to higher levels elsewhere. It happened 1 year ago with Michael Johnson. Yes, he got us to the Gold Cup, but he used Guyana to get a better career for himself. You can now anticipate the same thing happening with this coaching staff, except for the results are not so good. So they cannot use it as a stepping stone. But the second they get an opportunity to go elsewhere, they will be gone, and Guyana will be back to square one with no Guyanese coaches. Now, Guyana needs to use coaches who see the Guyana national team as the pinnacle of their coaching career. You know, I coach at club level. Now to coach at the national level is the highest level of coaching that I aspire to attain. And when you have that passion, that intensity, and that focus for your job, you'll have success. But when you're using a platform, a national country, to elevate yourself to get a job elsewhere, that may even be a club team. You may be using Guyana national team to get a club job elsewhere. We devalue ourselves, we disrespect ourselves, and we show ourselves no respect in our football environment.
Indeed, quite more than a mouthful, I should say, but explicitly presented. And I'm quite certain I see Saudi Gomes is smiling, Dr. Fraser, Coyote not smile, but I know education was the essence of what you're being saying there. Yeah. Dr. Fraser, I want to bring you in here with what would have started on the what's call it again? What FIFA had implemented here, normalization committee. When the normalization committee headed by Clinton Orlin were in place, they kicked off something called the Elite League. And that was thought to be something of a great birth that would have provided the ideal platform and some of what Captain Norris was alluding to, the importance of professionalism and attitude. And for some reason, the current administration just allowed that to deteriorate, and eventually it died. Your thoughts on that league when it started? How important do you think that was, the whole propelling the national program?
Without a doubt, Alan, the importance of the program is the highest you could possibly imagine in developing our football locally. But it goes back to the point I made earlier, and that Chris also supported, is that you must put aside personalities, show respect, right? So even if the organization, you don't, you don't like the personalities, you should respect the work that they did. And that's one of the reasons why, and I'll be open, why I supported Kashif and Shanghai, because the guys were able to do all the marketing, organizing, get the best players on board. You even had Chris coming from the UK to play one Kashif and Shanghai, right? Imagine. So that was the attraction. When Kashif and Shanghai was running the Elite League, you could have gone on a Tuesday night at Campaign Ghana and find 1,200 people in the ground. You can't even go to Ghana national team game at Lenora and find 1,200 people, right? So the thing is about respecting the capacities and the abilities that we have locally, right, to grow the game. And I would hope that on reflection, that the current administration would have realized that they would have made a mistake and get that organization back on board to organize whenever football restarts in Guyana. And that's would be a very, very important cog in the development of our game, right? And the exposure of our local players. Because without doubt, we have the talented players, but if that development step is missing, then you lose a lot of them, right?
And speaking of Kashif and Shanghai, I'm sure you're aware of the great loss, Coyote McKinnon, Chris Nurse as well, of a key figure within that structure. And also he would have extended some assistance within the national setup. He was part of it, and now gone to the land beyond. COVID-19, he was a victim of. I speak of Mark Shavir. Condolences to the families, and we know, of course, this weekend he will be laid to rest. But Coyote, you're as a Linden man, and you recalling Mark Shavir, Super Mark. Some of your thoughts on Super Mark being part of the national team.
They call Marky the philosopher. There was always a saying. There was always something that was motivational. Just knowing different languages and going to different countries, and he's able to communicate on behalf of the national team, on behalf of the player. Big figure, very intelligent guy, but always share his knowledge when needed. I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with him at some point in time in the national team, and we had good conversation. Even when Linden was going through the struggle, we had a meeting with the Gold Miners Association to I don't know if people remember, but I was in that meeting talking about helping the people of Linden in terms of any possible way of giving some support. This was the type of guy that will have his disagreement, but from what I know and my experiences with him, would stand up for the right if necessary, would be willing to go to battle for the right things. No one is perfect, but purpose and gift you cannot take away. And if somebody have a purpose and they have a gift to do something, regardless of what is happening outside of that realm, it don't mean that they would have lost their gift. And one of the things I remember most about him is he's a people person. Always want to see people do well. That is what will stick with me. That he always, regardless of what, he always wanted to see people do well.
I know he will be surely missed on the pages of the different football groups on the Facebook. Always has an opinion, and a strong opinion, defends his stance, and of course he was Chelsea for life. So Big Holmes, Antiguan football. I know it is structured in a way whereby the Premier Championship is the one I always look forward to. Teams are community based, and whenever a team wins, there's this whole victory lap throughout the island
Yes.
when that is assured, a whole motorcade of vehicles. That being part of the culture over the years I would have experienced. How important is it to development in building teams in a country that you use communities and have the teams community based? Has that really played a great role in the development there in Antigua?
It does. It does play a pivotal role in development. But over the last 10 years, we have moved away from that quite a bit. Whereas you have the politician who, in that particular community, who wants to win, his community team to win, would bring in foreign-based players to beef up his team. And as a result of that, you find the team that is representing that particular community, when the community goes out to watch the game, they only know maybe of the 11 players, maybe 2 players on the field. And it pulls away from the real community spirit. But I can tell you the positive of building strong community teams that feed into of building strong community players that feeds into the team. It does a lot for them both on and off the field, because those young players, when they're performing well and they get selected to the community team, when they walk around the community, the members of the community encourages them. They get a sense of satisfaction and well-being. The positive encouragement that they would receive from someone in the shop or someone on the block only does well for them by inspiring them. Now, there is no monetary reward for that, and you can't pay for that. But what it does for the individual, it takes them to a different level. So when it gets times for them, same young community players, to play at the national level, they're being inspired. And then you will have the inspired coaches to fuel them. And as a result, you get a domino effect. So you get strong community-based teams that strengthens your national program. And as a result, you get a wholehearted support of the community, country supporting the players. But we tend to be moving away from that over the last 10 years. And that is why we now have to try to regain that back. We actually had to go back now to look and find what's really in our DNA, what made us what we were before. So in finding out what we were, the actual DNA that built us, our aggressiveness, our commitment, our resilience, finding those DNA is so key. Now you must find the coaches that buy into that, to coach that method. They must understand what it takes that they're building. And as Coyote and Chris said, you actually need to have coaches that understand relationship, because you're dealing with people. They must be able not only to influence the players, but they must have the ability to inspire the players. So you see the full circle approach we are using in terms of education. And education plays a pivotal part of the ABFA right now. We have an education department that educates our coaches. We will educate our coaches in our realities. They must know exactly what we're looking for. You must coach our DNA. You must coach how we want you to coach. So you will know exactly the type of players we're looking to bring out. So when we're looking to bail out or roll out our another group of players in the next 5 to 6 years to strengthen our national players, we're not only building football players, but we're building players that will last, players that will have a future after football.
Rounded individuals.
Yes, rounded individuals. And that's what it is.
The nation would also benefit from. And
of
so
course.
The process plays a pivotal role in nation building as football as exemplified throughout the world. And
Correct.
I'm happy to know that you could have shared
Yes.
that experience, because I know you coming out from the Villa area where I lived, and how much the community fueled you
Correct.
into that career path that you took, going to college, coming back, serving.
Right.
We served together as administrators in Villa
That's right.
Line, elevating yourself to the national team. And that there, to me, were happy times, nice times.
Yes.
But to hear now that you're telling me that when you go to watch a Villa team, not saying Villa specific, but a team from a community, you could only identify 2 players from the community, and it's more foreign fusion of teams, because like you say, the politicians have gotten involved, and so the money is spending to bring in players. How do you counter such a situation, even at the administrative level in terms of keeping that at a minimal? Are there plans to have the federation identify that as a problem?
Yes, the key is now is to educate the coaches. Educate the coaches in such a way that it allows them to understand their purpose as being coaches. Your purpose is actually to develop the players within your community, to give each player a chance. That's what's happening. The coaches are so fearful. They so want to win that they prefer, I need to get a better player, and I might not have the better player. I might not want to take the time to coach that player to make him better. I prefer to go and buy one wholesale, one from overseas, which I don't know anything about, but I know he's good, and I want to win. I want to win now instead of building a player that will last. The reason why I can speak to that, because I'm a living example of that situation. I knew what the community did for me, and as a result, you're better able to speak to a situation when you have lived it, the experience. And we don't want that to happen to our players anymore. And our aim right now, and the Antigua and Barbuda Football Association aim, is to develop our coaches, educate them in such a way that they speak from the strategic plan that was developed as it relates to our DNA. You will coach in that method, develop our players so that we can have a strong national program. But we must give those young players a chance. They must get a chance to fail, build the experience so that they can be better players. If you don't give them a chance, they won't get a chance to make the mistakes and to correct those mistakes so that they can be better players. So opportunities must happen, and that is the key, you know. But so now we have to develop these coaches, and these coaches, when gain the knowledge, they can better serve the player.
I would add that the young players also need,
as a result, generate the players coming forward to field.
I would add that the young players also need to earn the opportunity, because unless there's a process and they earn the opportunity and we just give it to them, then there's no value to it, right? Because it's too easy to get. So they need to earn the opportunity.
That's correct.
I have a question for you, Russ.
Good day, Chris.
I have a question for you, Russ. After talking about culture, just after talking about culture and DNA, right?
Right, that's where I wanted to go with you.
I wanted to ask you. Let me put my question to you first, because I want you to answer my question. Do you think the current technical director of Guyana can build culture and DNA of Guyana football, not having a professional background, playing at the highest level, not being Guyanese? Do you think that gives him a skill set capable of building a culture and a DNA for Guyana football?
Nah.
So then, what are we doing? That's my question. What are we doing in development and progress as a nation if that's not possible?
Thank you. I'm happy to know that Sobi was able to explicitly present that there. So people who involved in Guyana's football, and that's what this platform is for, to educate. And we hope that education could resonate within the minds. But on that point there, Chris, and the Coyote, what are some, Sobi identifies some of the qualities of Antiguans: aggressiveness, commitment, determination. As players who would have played and experienced Guyanese, what are some of the qualities you could identify as we being possessed as footballers that could serve us in developing our football?
Well, first, I think you need to define the profile and the characteristics and principles necessary to be a high-level professional footballer first, because there's personality traits and characteristics that you need to be able to endure a career in football. Then you also need to balance that with the culture of Guyanese people. And between balancing those two, then you can create a profile of the players that you want to develop in Guyana. Now, if you don't have a professional background and you're not Guyanese, then I find it very difficult to build a DNA for Guyanese players and govern the structure of Guyanese football going forward, which is why I think that we're struggling so badly right now. Because even the Gold Cup, for me, the success of the Gold Cup was fantastic for Guyana, but it was soulless. It was soulless because it lacked any culture, it lacked any local presence. And there was players in the squad who had never even stepped foot on Guyanese soil. You never spent a 1 week training in Guyana, and the training camps were taken out of Guyana. So the players never even came to experience Guyana. So then they resonates with their soul, because even if it's an overseas player, when you spend time in Guyana, you become different to your culture, your heritage, your understanding. You understand more about where you're from. You understand more about giving back. you understand more about what it means to play for Guyana because you're trying to open opportunities and doors for the local players to get exposure and advancement. And without having experienced that and just going out on the national stage and wearing the jersey, you do a disservice because you don't understand the whole platform that takes place. So we've lost.
That is logically understandable, you know. It's impossible for you.
So we've lost our then over the years.
You know, and I think that's a point we've been making for several programs, Coyote, as you would recall, calling and lamenting the fact that we have the human resource personnel that can develop our football, and Antigua being a prime example here. But what are some of your thoughts, views on qualities, DNA qualities we might possess that we could build on?
So obviously we're known as a South American country, but we're in the Caribbean. If you look at the South American way, just like Guatemala, Central America, they have the Spanish DNA. So obviously they're a possession-based team. If you look at the history of Guyana, we always had players who were technically good. Ilo Watson. You go back, Dion Barnwell. You look at Collier Hercules, very technical, tactically sound. You could go look at Nigel Codrington. You go back and you look at Gregory Richardson. You look at Vernon Mills. All of our players, going back, we were always technically gifted. That means that we are a possession-based team. Now, if you don't have no identity, when a coach comes in and there's no development happening and you understand what is required at the international level, it's obvious he's gonna bring the players from abroad. Now, when the Spanish bring back a player, it's because that player is playing in an environment that represents what the Spanish team look like. The Spanish will not go and bring a player that playing possessional football, which is going from back to front, and bring him in a national team, because that's not the DNA of the Spanish team. Now, if you're gonna bring all the players, that means if you bring in these players, you have to change the DNA of the team, because you bring in a group of players that play a certain way, that don't necessarily represent the identity of Guyana. So now you're asking the Guyanese players to change how they play, and they don't play like that at home. They don't. It's not represented in their training. It's not represented by the coaches. So finding the identity, so what Nurse is speaking, to create a profile, to create indicators to say, well, you are a national player, then we must first have an identity. So when we bring in players that have parentage or whatever, it's because it fits who we are. But if we don't have the people who know who we are and they know who they are, then obviously they will bring the players based on who they are. So I said it, Ras, colonialization is something that it's an ideology that creates a philosophy. Okay, and we live by that. It controls the dynamics of our leadership. Now, for many years, history would have proven we are not necessarily known to be leaders. Leaders were identified, and leaders were defined of what it's supposed to look like. So oftentimes, if you don't look that part, if you don't speak that part, you are seen as not a leader. You're not respected because of your gifts. You are respected by a definition that is not connected to what you look like. So this is why it's hard to build culture. It's hard to build identity, especially in the Caribbean. It's very difficult. Because until now, if you look across the board, we've always invested in abroad. We have never invested at home. So I've had a Colombian coach. I've had different coaches.
Brazilian.
I've seen different coaches came in, right? So, and every time I played in national team since I was youth 15s. So I've been in this environment, but as I grew and now I'm more knowledgeable, I understand what was happening with me. Because every time a national team assembled, it was always a different way. This is why I continue to say, and people will say, oh, you're not in there, so you don't know what's happening. Football is played on the field. So whatever is happening in the planning, in the preparation, must be seen on the field. And if it's not being seen on the field, then the plan and the preparation wasn't good enough. That is the reality.
Yeah,
It don't mean it wasn't it don't mean it wasn't a good plan. It don't mean it wasn't a good preparation based on what you perceive. But at the end of the day, if it don't show itself on the field, then we have to go and reflect and we have to change the course of action. So for me, until we understand who we are a possession-based team. We have players who are confident on the ball. We've always proven that. We've always shown that. When Christopher Norris came into the national team, it was Bishop, Fatso, it was Leslie Holligan, man. It was Jackie Chan, Greg Richardson, it was Warner Mills, it was Randolph Jerome, Kerry Harris. These are all Guyanese born, played, and Jamal understood that. What Jamal did was created this professionalism where he took that rawness and he said, hey, we're going to dress like this. We're going to look like this. We're going to talk like this. And we're going to play like this. So now you had a group of guys who understood. So now we all knew what we wanted to do. We remember Howard Lowe. Remember Charles Pollard. You remember Walter Moore. These are born Guyanese. So when Chris Norris came, he was like, okay, I have to earn my place. He had to earn his place. And the other players, the Carl Courts and those who play at a very high level, they came in with so much respect of what they saw because we had an identity. Looking at the national team, it doesn't matter what nobody says, right? If you're a student to the game, if you have a sense of humility, it's not criticizing, and we have to come away from that. Every time somebody says something, it's taken so personal, and it's they don't know what they're saying. We are seeing. You can see it's constructive. We don't have an identity. It's not who we are. And if you say you've changed it, I want to see the evolution of what you're talking about, because I can't see.
I jumped in there, Russ, because even
come so fast, and it's time for us to, part. And I will start with Dr. Fraser in your parting words. So if you could, in a minute each, your parting words, Dr. Fraser.
All right. Just a couple of things that I wish to see. One is that despite the results, I would really like to see our best team on the field at all times. And that means that the coach, the management team must be able to manage the best players, the egos, and still be able to field them on the team. And then secondly, I would really like to see an investment in the local coaches, right? Ensure they get the relevant certification and exposure in professional environment. So those are my parting words. And of course, it's a pleasure to be on such an esteemed panel.
Thank you for affording us your precious time. Looking forward to having you with more. So, Obi Gomes, all the way from Wadadli.
Yes.
My second hometown.
Yes, man. Well, I'm listening to Chris, listening to Coyote, and listening to the doc. It has been a real pleasure being on this panel. But I see we have so much in common, We have so much in common. And a lot of it is that our local members association need to have more confidence in our local players and don't underestimate what we have. And that's the most important thing. We keep underestimating what we have. When you educate us, we can do wonders. You just need to give us a chance, But I'm very happy to hear Chris. I'm very happy to hear Coyote and everything that they have shared this afternoon, because it is our reality. It is our reality, and it's affecting us, and we have to make a difference, you know? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Obi, and my love and regards to our Dudley.
Thank you, man.
Christopher Nurse, Guyana's most successful captain.
I think we had a look at the case studies that have gone before us. You know, the only CONCACAF team I believe that really has a true identity is Mexico, because of the success they've had. Even if you look at the United States, 330 million people, and the best players in this country, despite the facilities they have, despite the numerous leagues they have, the best players still need to get out of the United States at 16 years old and go into Europe to have the best chance of succeeding at the highest level. So it's not going to be for 10 or 20 years, because the MLS now has been running 20 years and the United States doesn't have an identity. Every 4 years, the World Cup, they change their technical director. It goes from the French philosophy, the German philosophy. They're still trying to find the philosophy that best suits the United States. And people cannot hold a grudge against Christian Pulisic because he left the United States at 16, is now very much an overseas-based player, and comes back to the United States and either displays the German training that he's had or the English training that he's had. He's a top player, and the United States doesn't have an identity that supersedes either of those countries. They have very rich football history. So we have to understand that maybe it's time we focus on developing players who at 16 we can send into the top leagues overseas, because we're not going to develop a league in Guyana in the next 10 years that's going to allow international world-class talent to succeed. The US still isn't capable of keeping world-class talent in the US. They have to go to Europe, to the top leagues at 16 to finish off their development and nurturing in order to compete at the highest level. And we have to be cognizant of that and not be so hesitant to overseas-based players, because this is what we need to develop. Players at 16 years old can go and compete at the highest level with the best talent. And I think this is where we have to start. You know, Jamaica are starting to do it on a consistent basis. You're seeing a number of Jamaicans at 16 years old able to go into leagues overseas and compete and then come back and represent the national team. We shouldn't have any resentment against them when that happens, and we shouldn't create a divide of local and overseas. We should be developing the local overseas so they can go there and earn a salary where they can provide for their families. They can come back and invest in facilities. This is what we need to do, because a Guyanese league is never going to provide that opportunity for these players. So as much as we want to push our local, push them, develop them, and send them in the short term to places where they're going to become advanced, because we're not going to create that platform for 10 or 20 years locally if we get the right leaders to make it happen. So I think, you know, that's where the education starts, with giving people that information. Hey, listen, we need to send our best players over at 16, because that's the only way they survive in the game and they make a living from the game. Guyanese players don't get paid. They put the local national team players, local players into the national team, still pay them pittance. Have them training for months, still pay them pittance. So you can give them the opportunity, but at some point they become men. They need to provide for their families. They need to provide for their kids. They need to pay bills. And locally, we're not in a position where we can provide for them to that standpoint as yet. So we've got to now, youngsters 16 with talent, send them overseas and be cognizant of where we are in our journey.
Thank you very much, Skipper Nurse. Always so much to say and always on point. And the education continues, Christopher Nurse. Congrats with your success and best wishes in that tournament as you continue to spread the knowledge.
We won it.
Pardon me?
We won the tournament. The number one.
My. Yeah, well, that's time for celebration. Extend the congratulations to the team members and best wishes and continued success. Coyote, the privilege is yours to seal up this program.
Soccer education. Continue to educate, continue to develop. And as you develop, you're going to be able to develop people. You cannot do something that you have not done yourself. So continue to focus on soccer education, and we won't have overseas local. We will have the best players to perform at the highest level.
Before you go, and I want each one to give me their perspective. Coyote, 2 big finals this weekend. Tomorrow, bitter rivals, Brazil, Argentina. Who you have?
I think Argentina is my team, but Brazil.
The next day, England versus Italy. Who you got?
Italy.
So you got Italy and Argentina.
Yes.
So your selections.
Yes, I will go with Brazil and England.
Great. Chris.
Brazil are geographical neighbors, and we speak English. Brazil and England, 100% with me.
Great. And Doc, you will go in that same path.
Brazil and Italy.
Oh my, you spoil the party because I'm going Brazil and England too. So I guess Doc, you stand alone, and we're going to see. It can go either way, mind you. You know. And as we close today's program, today is a special day in the life of a former outstanding Golden Jaguar. He celebrates his Earth Day today. Collie Hercules, all the way from Linden, celebrates his birthday today. And tomorrow, another Golden Jag will celebrate his birthday too. That's Anthony Stanton. So from Real Football Vibes and the entire panel to both former Golden Jaguars, continuous blessings as you celebrate another Earth Day anniversary. And to you, the viewers and followers, thank you for being with us. And thank you for taking part in this interactive program. To you, the panel, it was great having you, and look forward to sharing more thoughts on Caribbean football as Real Football Vibes, keeping it real on the beautiful game, continues. So long, everybody. Thank you for joining us.